Welcome back to the Everyday Workbench. Today we are talking about how to prep your home for the real estate marketplace. And we brought in an expert. We brought in Dave Nimick. He's been a realtor for a long time. Dave, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate it. I'm Dave Nimick with Keller Williams Realty and been in the business about 20 years. And certainly these types of projects that we'll talk about are ones that both Sean and I are very familiar with.
Absolutely. And prepping the home maintenance-wise and beautifying it, is that considered part of the staging process, or is that separate in your mind?
No, I consider the entire preparation of the home, getting it ready for sale, is theoretically part of the staging process or preparations, but certainly a big part of it is any work that needs to be done. But beautifying is just making it look better and making it more presentable, making it more appealing for potential buyers.
By the time I get involved in a transaction, sometimes that will be a potential buyer handing me over an inspection report. And it's unbelievable the amount of common things on that inspection report that probably should have been taken care of beforehand, like simple things like valves and switches not working.
Right. And it's funny because there's a lot of, I'll get around to it that all of us, everyone who owns a home or even rents, but homeowners are kind of used to. They don't really, think about. Those are exactly the things that you really need to think about before you go on the market. And the reason is that potential buyers don't know your home, and they're just kind of walking in and they're kind of thinking, you need to impress me, right? Or the way I usually describe it is they're coming in kind of looking for things that they can say, well, I liked it, but, right? And you want to limit that list of I liked it, but things to minimal, if nothing. And so fixing the closet door that doesn't quite close right, all the little nitty gritty stuff that kind of annoys you, but you never got around to. Now's the time to do it before you go on the market.
And we all live busy lives, and some of us are not familiar with all of that nitty gritty stuff that's out there. What is the value, if any, of hiring a home inspector before you go on the market? So the home inspector is usually hired by the potential buyer, but what if you're a potential seller and you want somebody to come through and give you expert advice? Is that something you see a lot of?
Sure. I see it sometimes, and people often ask me that question. And I qualify because there's really two answers. When you're selling, you have to disclose anything that you're aware of legally. You have to be ethical about it. And so there's nothing wrong with doing an inspection. I often recommend it, but the inspector may point out things that you didn't know you were issues, and then you now are aware of, so then you have to disclose those. But the value is going through and finding some things, maybe even safety issues that come up, like a loose gas valve, something that is frightening for you and your family, plus any potential buyer. And that can allow you to address those things ahead of time and just make for a smoother transaction and process later.
Yeah. And just from my standpoint, I see some of the conditions that people leave their mechanicals room and their HVAC equipment. And it's like, change the filter before you go on the marketplace, clean the dust off of your boiler. There's simple things, but I think people just are maybe not aware of those items.
Well, overall, it's because when you're selling, it's been your home, like that's your sanctuary, right? So you really think of it as, it's just you've gotten used to everything. And especially, you don't spend a lot of time in the mechanical room, right? You don't hang out in the furnace room, not anyone that I know except for an HVAC guy, right? So other than that, it's something where you usually see like ironing boards or whatever gets thrown against that stuff, and it rarely gets paid attention to. But those are the things that you really want to get prepared and have the furnace serviced. Make sure that those things are cleared away. Those rooms, you mentioned, water heaters, any gas burning appliance has the potential to have a fire. So you don't really want anything surrounding those. So you always want to check those things. And those are things I often talk to clients about.
Yeah, there's something that instills confidence when you see that sticker on that forced air system that, yes, this was serviced 4 months ago or 6 months ago by this reputable company. That's kind of nice to see. So as you're diving into this process, it does take some time. Are you looking to start, the work on this deferred maintenance, or possibly working with a home inspector like 3 months out or 6 months out, or what is, in your mind, when should somebody start doing this work?
Well, oftentimes, I mean, I'm having conversations with people. It could be shortly before, they were referred to me or they found me somehow and they want to go on as soon as possible. Sometimes it's, at least a good month to 3 month runway. So it really, it varies. And so I think addressing the items as soon as you're made aware of them certainly is the way to do it. But it's usually not that far out. However, sometimes people have more extensive projects that at least they're considering, and obviously they bring it up earlier in the process.
Gotcha. So that's all the nitty gritty deferred maintenance type items. Now, as far as the aesthetics go, as far as the paint on the walls, refinishing of hardwood floors, what do you recommend on the inside of the house that people are going to see in a showing? How far should a seller go with that type of work?
Right. Well, it depends on the extent of how bad, for instance, the hardwood floors are. A lot of people have dogs, and sometimes, if the floors are totally gouged up, then it can often be worthwhile. It's really something where, yeah, it just depends on how bad off they are. Same thing with the paint, where if it can be touched up, that's great. But if there's like gouges all across where a couch has been up against the wall, it's often well worth repainting and addressing those items, because like I said, buyers are going to walk in and they're looking at the home, and if they see that it's in bad shape, they're going to wonder what else is wrong.
So what should I be doing with that Merlot red wall that I put in my kitchen in the mid 90s? Do I just touch that up, or what's your recommendation on that?
Well, certainly anything that's a darker color doesn't help the showings. It just doesn't help the staging process in general. So usually you want to lighten and brighten things up. And there's always different, popular colors at a certain time, but they're always pretty much a lighter color. So I would definitely address that, go through the full painting process for anything that's dark or old or just in need of attention, without question.
Well, I think this gray paint that's on my wall here is very sellable. I think it would look good during walkthroughs. Might be a tad dark, but I think it's still very relevant if you're asking my opinion.
I think you're okay with that, Sean. I think you're good.
Yeah. And as far as like getting outside, we all know and hear about curb appeal. And certainly I would think that now more than ever, when people are clicking through real estate listings on their phone and on the internet, the first picture you see is that exterior shot of the home, which certainly where curb appeal comes into play. What's your thoughts on there?
Well, without question, as far as, curb appeal, I look at it as a universal thing. It's more of the interior when it's a condo, but certainly, the exterior for single family home or any other type of property. And that is the first impression. People pull up, they're taking a look. You want to have, the lawn, you want to have everything in good order and looking good, shrubbery, whatever it is. You want to have it looking presentable. You want to invite the people in. You don't want to turn them off.
Okay. So, we're talking dollars and cents. Everything that we're talking about can cost a substantial amount of money. Now, will a potential seller get an ROI, a return on investment, on this money that they're putting into the house? Or is it just going to make the house sell faster, or, because it's kind of a heavy price tag, I would think?
Well, it really depends on what work is being done. So as far as certain things I generally do recommend doing is anytime that you can redo, for instance, a half bath or a smaller bathroom, that usually has a really good kind of return on investment.
From a standpoint of dollars invested, the amount of stress that's involved with a remodeling project, and just time in general, what are we realistically looking at for most sellers from a dollar standpoint? Because we probably can't do it all. So what should we focus on, and how much should we expect to spend on this?
I usually earmark, 1% of the value of a home potentially as costs that they should assume to put into it. And that's after I've talked to them about how much the home is worth. But that's probably a good investment, because usually that's going to pay off in spades as far as the return on investment, because they're spending it on that painting or whatever else to improve the home, and it usually brings about a good return.
So that seems pretty reasonable. 1% of the value of the home, roughly, and you're going to sell the home quicker, and you're going to possibly sell the home for more money, is what I'm reading into this.
Yeah, generally, it always comes down. I talk to people in real estate. It really comes down to pricing, staging, and condition. This is getting into the condition aspect of the three of those, right? And overall, if it's in good condition where people are walking through and they're like, well, I like that and I like that, and they don't know what condition the wall was in, or how dark that Merlot paint was. They just see that it's a nice property, then that's really gonna do very well. And if everything is in line, the pricing, the staging, and the condition, homes tend to sell quickly and sell for more money. Yeah.
Very good. So, so the process is essentially come up with a strategy 3 to 6 months out, possibly have a professional like a home inspector come through and flag possible issues and minor things to take care of, some of that deferred maintenance, brighten up the home with lighter paint, get rid of the dark colors, possibly work on some hardwood floors. The seller is going to expect to spend about 1%, but that's just, really an average, budget that you're thinking of. And if you do all of that, you're going to sell your home quicker and possibly for more money. And it sounds like it's going to be a less stressful process as well.
Well, and that's a big part of it too, is kind of facing these things up front, including like the mechanicals and just getting them serviced. It reduces the list that a buyer might have, after you go under contract and they do an inspection. And that can be a stressful time for a seller. And if you've addressed these things ahead of time up front, then usually that list is going to be a lot shorter, and it's going to be a much smoother and less stressful process as a whole. Absolutely.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Dave, for joining us here at the Everyday Workbench. Where can people get a hold of you, or where can they find you?
Sure. So my email is dave@thenimickteam.com. And you can reach me on my cell, 773-620-4444. And you can also find my website, thenimickteam.com.
You're a very brave soul putting your cell phone out there for the whole internet now knows Dave Nimick's cell phone. But that's good marketing probably as well. So thanks again for joining us. Thanks everybody for watching us today. I really appreciate you spending some time and learning what's needed to get your home prepped for the marketplace. If you have a question for Dave or myself, please leave it in the comments and we will get back to that question as soon as we can. And as always, thank you for watching the Everyday Workbench.